All right, so we're going to talk about word problems in real life situations and putting them in slope intercept form. So the y-intercept in this problem is going to be your starting point of the problem, and the slope is how that y-intercept is going to change. It's the change that happens. So just to kind of give you some helpful hints, these are some words that mean slope. Might not be all of them, but they are representative of things you see. So per, change, every, rate, each. So you see those words, that kind of indicates that whatever that's talking about will be the slope of your problem. The words that mean the y-intercept are words like beginning, start, starting balance, initial, down payment. So if you start seeing those words, that's kind of where you're going to have for your y-intercept. So in example 1, it says you open a bank account with a balance of $4 and you deposit $2 each day. So what this information is, your each day, your $2 each day you're depositing, that each tells you that that's a slope. So your slope here would be 2. And then you have a balance of $4. So that's your y-intercept because that's where your account starts. So your account starts with $4 and then you're going to deposit $2 each day. So again, once we know our slope and our y-intercept, then we write an equation. So we got y equals 2x plus 4. Okay, so that's the first step. Being able to identify what we got going on. So part A is asking how much money will you have in your account after 10 days? And so the after 10 days, your 10 days is your x value because that's what we don't know. So in this case, we're going to plug in 10 for the x value, and then we're going to figure out, well, how much money does that mean you'll have in the account? So now we take our equation, which was y equals 2x plus 4. And for x, we're going to plug in 10. So we have y equals 2. Substitute in 10 plus 4. And now we just go ahead and work this out. So we're going to do y is equal to 2 times 10, which is 20, plus 4. And then we add those, so we get y is equal to 24. So that tells us how much money will you have in the account after 10 days. You'll have $24 in your account after 10 days. Okay. So now part B is how many days will it take for you to save $50? So we're trying to figure out the days, which we saw was the x. And so you want to say you have $50. So that must be your y. So now we're going to plug in 50 for y. So again, we're going to write our equation, which we figured out above, which was 2x plus 4. And then we're going to substitute in 50 for y. Now this gives us a two-step equation, and we're just going to solve for x. So we're going to subtract 4 from both sides. And so we end up with 46 is equal to 2x. Divide both sides by 2. And then we get 23 is equal to x. So what does that 23 mean? It's 23 days. So it will take us 23 days to save $50. Okay? So how do we know if a value we're given is your x or y? That might have been something you were thinking above. So y is going to use the same units as your y-intercept. So think about how you determined your y-intercept. And then whatever units is going with the y-intercept, when they start talking about what to plug in for y, those will have the same units. Your x is going to be how often. And so often meaning time. So either days, months, minutes, seconds, weeks, whatever. That's going to go in for x. Okay, so let's look at example 2. It says on a road trip, your car uses 2 gallons of gas every hour. So here's one of those every that's telling me this would be my slope. Okay. And because you're using it, not adding it, your slope is going to be -2. Because think about it, if you're driving, the gas is leaving your car, it's not being added to. And then you started the trip, so you started the trip with 10 gallons of gas. So your y-intercept is your 10 gallons, right? And I put the unit just so we can help identify when we're solving later. So now we know our slope is -2, our y-intercept is 10 gallons. So our equation, y equals -2x plus 10. And so now we want to know after how many hours, so we're looking for hours, that's a time thing, so that means we're looking for x, will you be out of gas? So that's your gallons of gas. Now, if you're out of gas, that means you have no gas, meaning you have 0 gallons of gas. So for this, we're going to plug in 0, and that's your y value for you guys. And we're going to put in 0 for y. So then we take our equation, which was y equals -2x plus 10, and we're going to substitute in 0 for y. So we have our equation, y equals -2x plus 10, and we're going to plug in 0 for y. So 0 equals -2x plus 10. So now, equation we're going to solve. So we're going to subtract 10 from both sides. We're left with -10 is equal to -2x. And now we're just going to solve for x by dividing by -2 on both sides. So 5 is equal to x. So what does that mean? What is that answering? Our question was, how many hours will you be out of gas? So in this case, we can say in 5 hours, we will be out of gas. And so part B, it says how much gas. So how much gas, that's gallons of gas, that has the same units as your y-intercept. So this must be my y value that I'm looking for. Will you have after 3 hours? That's a time, so that must be x. So we know what x is, so we're going to plug in 3 for x. Okay, so our initial equation was y equals -2x plus 10. And now we're going to substitute in 3 for x. And then we're just going to work this out. So order of operations, this is -6 plus 10. And then we add those together, we end up with a +4. So what does that mean? Well, it's 4 what? We're looking for how much gas. So this is 4 gallons. So you will have 4 gallons of gas after 3 hours. All right, let's turn the page. Marco is 4 feet tall, and he will grow 25 feet per year. So I see this per, so we got our 25 feet per year. So here's my slope. And then we're starting off that Marco is 4 feet. So his y-intercept is 4 feet. That's our starting spot. So our equation, y is equal to 0.25x plus 4. So now our question is, how long will it take for Marco to reach 6.5 feet? So we're looking for how long. Long is amount of time. So we're looking for x, and he's going to reach 6.5 feet. And so that 6.5 feet has the same.
If you're still in the building, please call the attendance office. If Dr. Roy, please call the attendance office.
He has the same units as our y-intercept, so that must be our y value. So now we want to plug in 6.5 for y into our equation and figure out how many hours that is. So we start with our equation. Y is equal to 0.25x plus 4. And we are going to plug in 6.5 for y. So we plug in 6.5 is equal to 0.25x plus 4. And now we're just going to solve for x. So we're going to subtract 4 from both sides. We're left with 2.5 equals 0.25x. And then we're going to divide both sides by 0.25. And so now we're left with 10 is equal to x. So what does that mean? How long will it take? It will take, and we're talking about years, so it will take 10 years. And so our next question is, how tall will Marco be in 3 years? The 3 years is a amount of time, so that's our x value. And we want to know how tall, and how tall is in how many feet? It's our y value. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug in 3 for x and figure out how tall Marco would be in 3 years. Again, write your equation again. Y equals 0.25x plus 4. And then we're going to plug in 3 for x. So this is being multiplied. All right, so now we're just going to go through, use order of operations. You're going to multiply first. So we got 0.75 plus 4. And then add those together. We get y equals 4.75. So what does that mean? Our units for y are feet. So that means, and I don't have space to put in here, but he will be 4.75 feet tall. All right, take a second and pause the video, and you work on the 2 you try problems here, and then come back. All right, so for Shamu the Great Well, the slope is -1/2 because he wants to lose a half a ton of weight each year. So we -1/2, and the y-intercept is 10 tons. And then your equation would be y is equal to -1/2 x plus 10. So plug them into the equation for A. We want to figure out how much he will weigh in 4.5 years. So you plug in 4.5 for x. And then you go ahead and solve, so you wind up with 7.75. So that is 7.75 tons. That's how much Shamu will weigh in 4.5 years. For B, how long will it take Shamu to reach his goal weight of 7.5 tons? Well, how long is your x value? So that's what we're going to be looking for. And his goal weight of 7.5 tons is your y. So I plugged 7.5 for y. And I went ahead and solved that. Remember, in order to clear the fraction, you have to multiply by the reciprocal on both sides. And then you end up with 5, which meant 5 years. So if you look at number 5, it says 3 people start an online study group, and every day 1 person joins. So 3 people start, that's your y-intercept. And then 1 person joins every day, so the slope is 1. So your equation is y equals x plus 3. Okay? So remember, in y equals x plus 3, the slope is understood to be 1 there. Okay, so for part A, you said how many people will be in the group after 3 weeks? So 3 weeks is our x value because it has to deal with how long time, and we're looking for how many people. So we need to be careful. Make sure you don't substitute in 3 for x, because x is talking about in days, and they gave us 3 weeks. So we had to make sure we convert 3 weeks to 21 days, just because we know that the slope is actually 1 person every day. So we need to make sure we do everything in terms of day. So we substitute in the 21 for X, and then we end up with 24 people. So at the end of 3 weeks, you will have 24 people. All right, and that is it.